Jasmine Crockett stood motionless backstage, her heartbeat steady despite the weight of the moment. Through the monitor, she watched Bondi confidently addressing the Congressional committee, claiming, "Democrats have been lying to the American people for years." The cameras caught Bondi's smug smile as she declared, "No one has the courage to challenge me with actual fact." Little did she know, Congresswoman Crockett had spent weeks preparing for exactly this moment, armed with evidence nobody expected her to have. The committee room buzzed with tension as Bondi continued her testimony, Republican members nodding along, seemingly another victory for the former Florida Attorney General. But then something changed. The committee chair announced, "The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Miss Crockett, for 5 minutes of questioning." What happened next left everyone in the room completely speechless. Crockett walked to her seat, calmly, arranged a folder of documents, and looked directly at Bondi. The silence in the room was electric as Crockett began speaking, her voice clear and unwavering. "Miss Bondi, you've made some bold claims today. I have evidence here that will prove every single one of them false. Are you prepared to explain yourself to the American people?" Bondi's confident smile faltered for just a moment, a flash of uncertainty that cameras caught and would soon spread across social media. No one expected what was about to unfold in the next 5 minutes. A takedown so thorough and brutal that political analysts would be discussing it for months to come. Crockett walked to her seat, calmly, arranged a folder of documents, and looked directly at Bondi. The silence in the room was electric as Crockett began speaking, her voice clear and unwavering. "Miss Bondi, you've made some bold claims today. I have evidence here that will prove every single one of them false. Are you prepared to explain yourself to the American people?" Bondi's confident smile faltered for just a moment, a flash of uncertainty that cameras caught and would soon spread across social media. No one expected what was about to unfold in the next 5 minutes. A takedown so thorough and brutal that political analysts would be discussing it for months to come. Bondi had been dominating political talk shows and congressional hearings for months, her reputation as a fierce defender of conservative policies growing with each appearance. As Florida's former Attorney General and a prominent legal voice, Bondi carried herself with the confidence of someone who rarely faced meaningful opposition. Her slick presentations and aggressive rhetoric had made her a favorite among conservative media, where she would regularly make bold claims that went largely unchallenged. The hearing that day was supposed to be another victory lap. Bondi had been invited by Republicans to testify on government accountability, and she came armed with her usual arsenal of attacks against Democrats. The committee room was packed with news cameras lined up to capture what many expected to be simply another day of partisan theater. But in the wings waited Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the freshman representative from Texas, who had quietly been building a reputation for her razor-sharp legal mind. Before entering politics, Crockett had been an accomplished civil rights attorney with a gift for dismantling flawed arguments. Unlike many of her colleagues, Crockett didn't seek the spotlight. She preferred to do her homework, gather facts, and strike only when she had overwhelming evidence. "She's been preparing for this moment for weeks," whispered one of Crockett's staffers to a colleague. "She hasn't slept more than 4 hours a night reviewing documents, checking sources, building an airtight case." What made this confrontation particularly significant wasn't just the clash of personalities. It represented something far more important. Bondi had been spreading misinformation that had real consequences for policy decisions affecting millions of Americans. If left unchallenged, her testimony today would likely be cited in upcoming legislation. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The committee room represented a stark visual contrast between the two women. Bondi sat confidently at the witness table, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing an expensive designer suit that projected authority and power. She had arrived with an entourage of assistants carrying her briefing books, a small army supporting her testimony. Crockett, by comparison, sat among her fellow committee members, less flashy but intensely focused. While Bondi had brought an entourage, Crockett had brought something far more dangerous: facts. As the chair recognized Congresswoman Crockett for her 5 minutes of questioning, the atmosphere in the room suddenly shifted. Those familiar with Crockett's work straightened in their seats, suddenly paying closer attention. Something unexpected was about to happen, and everyone in that room was about to witness a moment that would reverberate throughout Washington for months to come. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Crockett began, her voice calm but firm. "Miss Bondi, I've been listening carefully to your testimony today, and I have several questions about the claims you've made." Bondi nodded confidently, clearly expecting the standard partisan back and forth that usually characterized these hearings. "Of course, Congresswoman. I'm happy to clarify anything you didn't understand." The subtle condescension in Bondi's tone didn't go unnoticed. Several committee members exchanged glances, and a few staffers in the back of the room raised their eyebrows, but Crockett remained unfazed. "Let's start with your claim that the previous administration had, and I quote, the strongest job creation record in American history," Crockett said, opening a folder in front of her. "Are you standing by that statement?" "Absolutely," Bondi replied without hesitation. "The numbers don't lie." Crockett nodded thoughtfully. "I agree that numbers don't lie. That's why I'm confused by your statement." She pulled out a document and slid it into the projector. Suddenly, a chart appeared on screens throughout the room. "This data comes directly from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As you can see, job creation during the administration you're praising actually ranks 5th in modern history, not 1st. Bondi's smile tightened slightly. "Well, Congresswoman, if you look at the specific sectors I was referencing, I'm looking at the exact transcript of your statement on Fox News last week," Crockett interrupted, producing another document. "You made no mention of specific sectors. You claimed it was, and again I quote, the strongest job creation record in American history. Period. That statement is demonstrably false." The room grew quieter. Republican committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the typical grandstanding they were accustomed to. Crockett was methodically dismantling Bondi's claims with precise evidence. "Let's move on," Crockett continued, not giving Bondi time to regroup. "You also stated that crime rates skyrocketed under Democratic leadership in major cities. I have here the FBI uniform crime reports for the past decade." Another document appeared on the screen. "As you can see, violent crime rates have actually decreased in 7 of the 10 largest Democrat-led cities over the time period you referenced." Bondi tried to interject. "If you cherry-pick certain statistics—" "These aren't cherry-picked, Miss Bondi," Crockett replied firmly. "These are the comprehensive official crime statistics that law enforcement agencies themselves report." "Are you suggesting the FBI is publishing false data?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Bondi's face flushed slightly as she realized the trap she was in. Deny the data and she'd be questioning the credibility of law enforcement agencies her own party staunchly defended. Accept it and she'd have to admit her claims were false. Before Bondi could formulate a response, Crockett pressed forward. "Now, the most troubling claim you made today involves election security. You stated that there were, and I quote, thousands of verified cases of election fraud in the last presidential election." The tension in the room was palpable. Now, this was entering politically charged territory. "I have here," Crockett continued, "the official reports from election officials in all 50 states, including those led by Republican administrations." She held up a thick stack of documents. "The actual number of verified fraud cases was 74 nationwide, not thousands, and only 12 of those were significant enough to potentially affect any outcome, all in local races, not national ones." Bondi's confident demeanor was cracking. She glanced toward Republican committee members, seemingly hoping for intervention, but they were stunned into silence by the methodical presentation of evidence. "Miss Bondi," Crockett pressed, her voice still measured, but now carrying an unmistakable intensity. "You're a former attorney general. You understand the importance of accurate testimony. Yet, in the past 30 minutes alone, I've identified 3 major claims you've made that are demonstrably false according to official government data." The committee chair, sensing the momentum shifting dramatically, attempted to intervene. "The gentlewoman's time." "I still have 2 minutes remaining, Mr. Chairman," Crockett replied without breaking eye contact with Bondi. The chair, checking the clock, nodded reluctantly. What happened next shocked everyone in the room and would soon go viral across the country. Crockett pulled out one final document, an email that appeared on the screen with Bondi's name clearly visible in the sender field. Miss Bondi, can you confirm if this is your email from March 15th of last year? Crockett asked. Bondi stared at the screen, her face suddenly pale. The email showed correspondence between Bondi and a network producer with a line that read, "The data doesn't support our narrative, but let's go with the talking points anyway. Viewers won't check the facts." The room erupted in gasps. Journalists frantically began typing on their phones. Democratic members leaned forward in shock while Republicans looked equally stunned. This wasn't just a political disagreement anymore. This was evidence of deliberate misinformation. That email is taken out of context," Bondi stammered, her composure completely shattered. "The full email chain is available for the committee's review," Crockett replied calmly. "I'm simply asking if you wrote these words." The tension in the room had reached a breaking point. Everyone waited for Bondi's response, watching as the former Attorney General, once so confident and commanding, struggled to find words. The stage was set for the defining moment of the hearing, the instant when Jasmine Crockett would deliver the final blow that would silence Pam Bondi and change both of their political trajectories forever. As Bondi fumbled for a response, Crockett seized the moment that would later be replayed millions of times across social media and news networks. She leaned slightly forward, her voice steady and clear. "Miss Bondi, let me remind you that you are under oath before this committee." Crockett said, "Did you write this email instructing your team to use talking points that you knew were contradicted by the actual data?" The committee room fell completely silent. Even the usual background shuffling of papers ceased. All eyes were fixed on Bondi, whose polished exterior had crumbled. Sweat visibly beaded on her forehead as she realized the trap had closed around her. "I would need to review the context of
Bondi
that communication,"
replied
weakly. "The context is quite clear in the full thread," Crockett responded, sliding the complete email chain into the record. "You explicitly acknowledged that the data didn't support your public claims, but directed your team to make those claims anyway, calling it a narrative rather than factual reporting." Crockett then executed a masterful shift in tone, her voice dropping slightly as she delivered the line that would soon become a political catchphrase. "Miss Bondi, you've built your career telling others they are lying to the American people, but the evidence shows that you're the one who has been deliberately spreading misinformation. The difference is I didn't just accuse you, I brought receipts." The chamber erupted. Democratic members couldn't contain their reactions, some actually gasping audibly, others frantically whispering to aides. Republican members sat frozen, stunned by the methodical dismantling they had just witnessed. In the press section, reporters were already furiously typing headlines. "I brought receipts," instantly ricocheted across social media platforms. Within seconds, "Crockett brought receipts" and "Bondi silenced" began trending. Video clips of the exchange were being shared faster than platforms could count the views. But Crockett wasn't finished. With remarkable composure, she turned to address the committee chairman directly. "Mr. Chairman, given that Ms. Bondi's testimony appears to contain multiple demonstrably false statements, as I've documented with official government data, and given the evidence suggesting she knowingly presented information she knew to be inaccurate, I move that her entire testimony be stricken from the record as unreliable and potentially perjurious." The chairman, visibly uncomfortable, looked to his staff for guidance. This wasn't a typical procedural request. It was a devastating indictment delivered with the precision of an experienced trial attorney. Crockett continued, "I request that the committee formally refer this matter to the Department of Justice for investigation into potential perjury before Congress." Bondi's legal background made her fully aware of the seriousness of this development. Her face, once flushed with embarrassment, now drained of color completely. The former prosecutor had suddenly become the defendant, and the evidence against her was damning. Republican committee members finally found their voices, attempting to call points of order and procedural objections. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The visual of Bondi, once so confident and accusatory, now silent and defensive, was seared into the minds of everyone watching. Crockett, maintaining perfect composure, used her final seconds to deliver the coup de grace. Miss Bondi has spent years accusing others of lying to the American people. Today, the American people have seen where the real deception lies. And unlike many of Miss Bondi's claims, what I've presented today isn't partisan rhetoric. It's documented fact. As the chairman's gavel came down, announcing that Crockett's time had expired, the damage was complete. In just 5 minutes, Jasmine Crockett had not only refuted Bondi's claims, but had systematically destroyed her credibility with surgical precision. And she had done it not with partisan attacks, but with irrefutable evidence and Bondi's own words. The political world had just witnessed something rare and powerful, a moment of genuine accountability delivered with such precision and evidence that no spin could undo the damage. As Bondi sat silently at the witness table, visibly shaken, it was clear to everyone present that they had just witnessed a career-defining moment. Though not the one Bondi had anticipated when she confidently entered the hearing room that morning. The aftermath of Congresswoman Crockett's 5-minute takedown was immediate and seismic. As the committee called a 15-minute recess, Pam Bondi was quickly surrounded by her team, their faces grave as they huddled in urgent conversation. The former Attorney General, once commanding and authoritative, now looked diminished, repeatedly shaking her head as aides showed her the explosion of reactions on their phones. Outside the hearing room, the corridors filled with journalists scrambling to file their stories. The narrative had completely flipped from what had been anticipated that morning. Instead of another platform for Bondi's accusations, the hearing had become the scene of her public undoing. One veteran reporter was overheard telling a colleague, "I've been covering Congress for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Crockett didn't just win an argument. She systematically dismantled someone's entire public persona with evidence they couldn't refute." Within the hour, the video of the exchange had spread across every major social media platform. The hashtags Crockett, Clip Brock, and Bondi Silenced were dominating trending lists nationwide. Clips focusing on different moments from the exchange were being shared millions of times. The moments of Crockett producing the official statistics, the revelation of the damning email, and especially her devastating line about bringing receipts became iconic. News networks scrambled to adjust their coverage. What had been expected to be straightforward partisan testimony was now the political story of the month. Sheeran's reading Bondi Exposed and Crockett's Receipts flashed across screens as analysts and commentators dissected every moment of the exchange. By evening, the impact had spread far beyond political circles. Late-night comedy shows were hastily rewriting their monologues. Memes comparing Crockett to various movie characters delivering knockout blows flooded the internet. Even celebrities who rarely commented on politics were sharing the video with captions like, "This is how you handle misinformation," and "Watch and learn." The next morning, newspaper headlines told the story clearly. Crockett brings receipts. Congresswoman's evidence silences Bondi. 5 minutes of fury. How Jasmine Crockett systematically dismantled Pam Bondi. The receipts don't lie. Bondi faces potential perjury investigation after congressional testimony. From prosecutor to defendant, Bondi's credibility crisis after Crockett confrontation. The political fallout was swift and significant. Media outlets that had regularly featured Bondi as a commentator suddenly found themselves in a difficult position. Several canceled her scheduled appearances, citing vague, programming changes. Others who kept her on their schedule faced intense backlash from viewers demanding they explain why they would continue platforming someone whose credibility had been so thoroughly compromised. For Congresswoman Crockett, the impact was equally dramatic, but in the opposite direction. The freshman Congresswoman, previously known primarily to her constituents and close followers of congressional politics, had become a national figure overnight. Interview requests flooded her office. Senior Democratic leaders publicly praised her preparation and precision. The House Minority Leader told reporters, "What Representative Crockett demonstrated wasn't just political theater. She showed what effective oversight actually looks like. Thorough research, precise questioning, and a commitment to factual accuracy over partisan talking points." Perhaps most significantly, legal experts began weighing in on the potential consequences of Bondi's testimony. Former federal prosecutors appeared on news programs explaining the seriousness of potential perjury charges. Law professors wrote opinion pieces about the ethical obligations of attorneys when making public statements. The matter had transcended politics and entered the realm of professional and legal accountability. 3 days after the hearing, the story took another turn when additional emails surfaced from the same thread Crockett had revealed. These messages showed Bondi had been warned by her own researchers that her claims were factually incorrect. Yet, she had pushed forward with them anyway, explicitly stating that narrative matters more than nitpicking over data. Social media erupted again with a new wave of reactions. The phrase narrative matters more than nitpicking over data became an instant meme used to mock any obvious attempt to ignore inconvenient facts. A week after the hearing, the first concrete professional consequence emerged. A prestigious law school withdrew an invitation for Bondi to serve as a guest lecturer on ethics in public service. Their statement diplomatically cited scheduling conflicts, but everyone understood the real reason. For Bondi personally, the impact was devastating. Sources close to her revealed she had canceled multiple appearances and retreated from public view to reassess her messaging strategy, a transparent attempt at damage control that only fueled more criticism. Political analysts began referring to the Crockett Effect, a new wariness among public figures about making sweeping claims that could be factually disproven. Congressional committees saw witnesses arriving with significantly more documentation and precise language, desperate to avoid becoming the next Bondi. As for Congresswoman Crockett, she handled her newfound fame with characteristic precision. Rather than taking a victory lap, she used her increased platform to focus attention on policy issues. In her first major interview after the hearing, when asked about the confrontation, she simply said, "My job isn't to create viral moments. My job is to ensure that the American people receive accurate information upon which policy decisions are made. When someone testifies before Congress, they have an obligation to tell the truth, especially when they've spent years accusing others of lying." The contrast between the two women's trajectories could not have been more stark. Bondi, once a rising star known for her aggressive accusations, had been revealed as cavalier with facts and willing to prioritize narrative over accuracy. Crockett, previously known primarily to close observers of Congress, had emerged as a powerful voice for evidence-based accountability. 1 month after the hearing, the final blow came. The committee voted to refer Bondi to the Department of Justice for investigation into potential perjury. While legal experts noted that such investigations rarely result in charges, the reputational damage was incalculable. The woman who had built her brand on accusing others of dishonesty now faced formal scrutiny of her own truthfulness. The story of Pam Bondi and Jasmine Crockett had become more than just a viral political moment. It had evolved into a case study on the power of preparation, the importance of evidence-based discourse, and the potential consequences when public figures prioritize narrative over facts. In congressional hearing rooms, a subtle change could be observed. Witnesses appeared more cautious, more precise in their language, more careful to distinguish between opinion and fact. Some staffers had taken to whispering a new warning to prepare their principals before potentially contentious hearings. Remember Bondi? Crockett might be watching. 6 months later, a political science professor summarized the impact in a widely shared analysis. What made Crockett's confrontation with Bondi so significant wasn't just the dramatic nature of the exchange. It was that it represented something increasingly rare in our political discourse. A moment when well-researched facts definitively triumphed over confident but unsupported claims. In 5 minutes, Crockett demonstrated the enduring power of evidence in an era often dominated by narrative. The Crockett brought receipts moment had entered the political lexicon, referenced whenever someone came extraordinarily well-prepared to challenge misinformation. Bondi, meanwhile, had seen her public profile diminish dramatically. Her once frequent appearances were reduced to friendly platforms where she wouldn't face challenging questions about her credibility. It was a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in politics and how a single well-documented confrontation can permanently alter trajectories. Jasmine Crockett had silenced Pam Bondi not through louder shouting or more dramatic accusations, but through something far more powerful: irrefutable evidence delivered with precision and composure. What did we learn from this explosive confrontation? The lesson is clear. In a world saturated with information and misinformation, Evidence is the ultimate weapon. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win a debate. She set a new standard for accountability. She proved that no matter how confident someone sounds, how polished their presentation is, or how powerful their platform seems, they are no match for someone who has done their homework and comes armed with the truth. This story is a blueprint for how to challenge falsehoods in any arena, from politics to everyday life. It teaches us the power of preparation, the importance of relying on verified data, and the impact of staying calm and focused under pressure. The next time you hear a claim that doesn't sound right, remember this moment. Remember that you, too, have the power to seek out the facts, to ask the tough questions, and to demand proof. Don't just get informed. Get equipped. Learn how to spot misinformation, understand how to verify sources, and build your own arsenal of knowledge. Because in the end, the truth doesn't just need defenders. It needs people who are ready to bring the receipts. Share this story with someone who needs to see it, and make sure you're prepared for whatever comes next.